1-800-CALL-ATT presents Up Close. Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Rush has been together for more than 20 years. Even so, when bassist lead singer Geddy Lee, guitarist Alex Lifeson, and lyrical drummer Neil Peart reconvened to record their latest album, Test for Echo, there was a readjustment period required. Here's Geddy Lee.
Alex and I spent the first 2 days doing nothing but talking, getting to know each other, getting into each other's heads, trying to understand where we were at, and trying to figure out if there was a relationship here still, if there was a musical relationship and a way that all these things should still function. And, because after a certain period of time, it's appropriate every once in a while to question whether this thing is still worth doing. And I think that's what we were going through at the beginning. Is this still worth doing? Do we have valid music to make? Is there any kind of statement that is turning us on musically, and do we feel that there's anybody out there that really, gives a shit anymore?
Oh, we think people give a hoot. Test for Echo is certainly reverberating all over the airwaves and all over part one of Media America Radio's presentation of Rush. Up Close. Are you ready? The title for both that song and Rush's new album is Test for Echo. Geddy Lee.
We kept finding that in the middle of writing one song, let's say we'd have a verse down and a chorus, and we'd be really pumping, and we'd be looking for, a bridge or something, and we'd come up with this idea that had nothing to do with the song we were working on. So we'd say, normally when that happened, we'd just catalog it and come back to it. But we said this time, let's stop working on this other song and let's follow this trail, because obviously we're most excited about this trail. So we kept following the spark, if you will, and we kept going from song to song. And before we knew it, we had about 6 songs under construction at the same time, and that was a lot of fun. And I had no idea that Neil was, desperate to hear what we were doing, and we was like weeks, two weeks later, almost 3 weeks before he'd heard anything, because then Alex and I, wanted to kind of show off to Neil a little bit. We wanted to get our songs totally together so that when we presented them to him, they were so complete. I was already putting vocal harmonies on, and Alex was doing little solos, and so possibly a little unfair to our drumming friend, but at the same time, he loved the material we'd worked on, so it was good. It was a much more positive way of doing it.
Driven from Test for Echo, Geddy Lee takes off on another song from the CD, The Color of Right.
Well, it's about mistakes to me. It's about mistakes. However, we want everything balanced, but sometimes we're fooled into believing what we're doing is more important than what we are leaving behind. And sometimes it works the opposite way, So you can be obsessed with a particular thing you want to accomplish, and that thing you want to accomplish becomes a mission, and that mission becomes kind of holier than holy in your mind, forsaking all else. And it's a mistake. It's the mistake that you make in pursuit of something. You can liken it to wanting to go on the road and tour, our situation. We want to tour, we want to bring our music to our fans, but I don't want to leave home. I don't want to disrupt my family. So, crisis, deal with this crisis, but try to deal with it in the right way. It's very hard.
We've been Rush for longer than we'll ever admit to.
An up-close confession from Geddy Lee.
We had a keyboard player when we were sort of a garage band, like a blues-based. We were pretty blues-based back then. We did a lot of... It's funny. We did a lot of songs by English blues bands, which were just American blues songs done in an English blues way. So here you have Canadians playing English blues, which is playing American blues. I mean, if that's not perverted, I don't know what is. You couldn't get farther away from the real blues.
Finding My Way found its way onto Rush's 1974 debut, and the band found their way from the blues into a harder genre. Here's Alex Lifeson.
We were a heavy metal band from the first generation. Our early influences, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, And we developed from there, and other influences came into play, so that when there was the resurgence of this whole heavy metal scene, this new wave of heavy metal, we'd sort of gone past that, I think, but that label stuck for quite some time. It still does, as a matter of fact. I don't think we're a heavy metal band at all. I don't think it's really that important, but it's certainly not accurate.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Welcome back to Rush Up Close on the Media America Radio Network. Rush began to develop more and more intricate songs until 1978's Hemispheres, which carried only 4 tracks. The title piece alone covered the entire first side. On 1980's Permanent Waves, they cut the songs down to size. Geddy Lee.
Well, we were bored with it. You know, it was really nothing more than we realized if we did another side-long epic, we weren't really being progressive. You know, the one thing we've tried to dedicate ourselves to is progressing and moving, you know, whether it's forward or sideways, just, you know, we have to keep moving, just not stand still. We realized if we did another 20-minute epic, what are we really proving?
Neil Peart.
Long pieces of music are very, very difficult, both in the writing and the recording sense of them, trying to keep a 20-minute piece of music together in your head while you're working on bits of it in the studio and so on. It's tremendous practice for arrangements and for putting pieces of music together and so on. We've garnished all of that experience now, so that when it comes to putting together a shorter song, we can apply that same experience and the same mental capability of dealing with a whole lot of different ideas, and now we can interpret them a little more simply, I think, because we have so many colors to draw from.
Permanent Waves, Spirit of Radio. Alex Lifeson.
We're very much in control of what we're doing. When we make a record, our manager, Ray, never comes to the studio. He will not come into the studio, and that's his own policy. He says, you know, you guys don't come in my office when I'm on the phone. Thank you very much. So I won't come in the studio when you guys are working. And he'd rather wait until the record's finished and then listen to it, kind of thing. And I respect that. I think it's important. We write the music we want to write. We record what we want to record. We package it the way we want to package. And we're fortunate in that way, so that, you know, we're really holding the reins. And I think that's really important.
You're tuned to the Media America Radio Network and Part 1 of Rush Up Close. The great success of Permanent Waves began a string of 6 straight top 10 albums. Neil Peart.
When you like a band that's not popular and then they get popular, you feel a bit cheated because you like the exclusivity of being the only person in your high school or the only person on your block that liked that band. And that's a real personal relationship, and I know what that's like for a band when you discover a band, so to speak, and you love it and you try to get all your friends to like them and all that. That's a very special thing. But then when all of a sudden everybody that you know likes this band, it takes away a little of the magic from it. But as far as when you think a band has sold out, I think that's usually apparent in the music. Whenever I've been disappointed in a band and felt that they hadn't lived up to what they can do, I think it hasn't been because they were popular, but it's because what they did, you know. I think the music shows that. But it's funny that people never have that trust that you're not going to sell out. I was reading I got a letter the other day from a fan, and he'd written a term paper in school about us, and it only went up to the time of Permanent Waves, and he's writing about all our music, and it was written in very technical manners. He's analyzing all of our songs from their technical musical makeup and so on. And then at the end of it, his concluding statement was what he hoped for the future would be good unless we'd sold out and went commercial, you know, which really surprised me because it's something we'd never considered or even hinted at, either, you know, implicitly or explicitly. But this guy was still worried that we were going to sell out.
Moving Pictures YYZ. When Neil Peart joined Rush, he brought not only his enthusiasm and torrid drumming, he also brought a seemingly inexhaustible head full of lyrical ideas. Here's Geddy Lee.
Since he joined the band, he did most of the lyrics. I mean, there was always a few songs that I would write or Alex and I would attempt to write. And we still, from time to time, come up with some lyrics. But, you know, we're a little lazy, and as soon as we knew there was a guy here who would do it, lyrics were always like, you know, all right, I'll do them. There was always that kind of attitude, and we had a guy here, you know. We had a guy, he wants to do this. It's like, he never thought of doing it until we suggested it. But we noticed on the first tour we did with him, Alex and I were going, this guy reads a lot of books. Yeah, he talks pretty well, too. Maybe he can write lyrics. Okay, you write the lyrics, okay? well, I'll give it a try. That was the scenario. So since he started to have a natural feel for it, we just bailed out and just concentrated on music.
1-800-CALL-ATT presents Up Close. Hi, I'm Dan Neer. With the release of their latest CD, Test for Echo, Neil Peart, Alex Lifeson, and Geddy Lee of Rush naturally had to think about touring. Here's bassist and vocalist Geddy.
We can't be Rush and not tour. A lot of what we do and a lot of our sound was created on the road. It was born out of a touring situation, out of a performing live situation. So for me, as difficult as it is, I have to do it. It's part of what I am.
We're right in the middle of a 3-part presentation of the Media America Radio Network. Welcome to Part 2 of Rush, Up Close. From Rush's 1981 multi-platinum moving pictures CD, we just heard Red Barchetta. Here's Rush drummer and lyricist Neil Peart.
A lot of our work really is a question of craftsmanship more than inspiration. And when we write now, we set aside a month of time and we get together and we do nothing but write for all that time. So the inspiration really has to have come earlier. And speaking lyrically, for instance, I keep a running notebook all the time, but I don't have the state of mind on the road to work on songs and to sit down and concentrate on it, because my mind is always concentrated on the show and and that whole part of things. So that I just keep a running notebook of ideas, and then when it comes to the writing part of it, I don't have to sit there and wait for inspiration to come, because I have pages of inspirations. I just have to take the craftsmanship of putting those together, finding the threads that lock all those ideas into each other. It's a very natural thing that people tend to think of being a little mystical, and perhaps one split second of it is mystical, but for the most part it's just you write about things that you've been thinking about a lot because you care about them enough, and most human beings are pretty lazy. I can't be bothered to write about something that I'm not interested in, so I have to really care about something before I can be bothered to sit down and work on it for however long it might take.
Geddy Lee with school chum Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, a.k.a. the Mackenzie Brothers.
I don't think there's a person on the planet that wasn't so surprised at how well that thing did, especially them.
Geddy Lee's life with the Mackenzies was short-lived, and soon he was back making music with Rush. Up Close returns with Rush guitarist Alex Lifeson.
I think New Old Man was the first single that we ever had that had quite a wide appeal, especially on radio, where it wasn't only those kind of stations that played harder stuff. As a musical piece, it was a departure for us. It was something a little more different, a little poppier, I think. The influences were a bit different in a song like that.
New World Man from Signals, Geddy Lee.
When we finished Signals with Terry Brown, which is the last album we did with Terry, we were at odds with ourselves. We didn't know if we were going in the right direction. We didn't know if we were pushing the band the right way. So we thought we'd redefine our sound and get a new producer. And at that time, all the problems finding the right guy to work for us didn't help anything, but it did help in uniting the band. And we did most of the pre-production by ourselves for Grace Under Pressure. And we sort of got everything together, and we were sort of running the band on our own.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Welcome back to Media America Radio's presentation of Rush Up Close. Let's continue on now with Alex Lifeson's memory of the Grace Under Pressure sessions.
It's funny, with Just an Early Warning, that was just one of the synthesizers, the PPG, and we wanted to just simulate a missile taking off or that type of thing without really being blatant, picking up a sound effects record. When it went down to get pressed to do the lacquers, which the record is made from, the engineer thought that it was all distortion on the front. He was really concerned, and he pointed it out to Peter. He said, you have some distortion there. It's no, it's supposed to be there.
Distant Early Warning from Grace Under Pressure. Here's Neil Peart.
We've been very lucky that all three of us are involved in the songwriting, so there's no frustration of people's ideas not being used. As far as musical stylistic approaches, we all like the same kind of influence, or if we don't, we're willing to have them in. If somebody has a particular style of something, whether it's me rhythmically or one of the other guys in terms of sound textures or whatever, we'll find a place for it and we'll make it a part of Rush. So there isn't that frustration. As a drummer, there's no style of music that I like to play that I haven't been able to play in Rush. You know, everything from fusion to reggae has found its place. And I'm happy with that, because I wouldn't want to be a jazz drummer. I wouldn't want to be a reggae drummer. I'm a rock drummer, and that's what I love to do. But I liked all that other stuff too. So if I can incorporate it, I'm not a dissatisfied musician on any level, as a writer or as a drummer. I get to do everything I like, really. So, you know, how could I possibly complain?
We've always been very close friends. We've always been more like family.
Rush's Alex Lifeson.
And it goes as far as our crew. We've always been very close to the crew and to the people we work with. And we're still doing it, so we've done something right, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Plus the fact that we love what we do. I mean, touring makes that a little more difficult. Increasingly, as you get older, it becomes less of that, you know, wild dream come true kind of thing that it was when we were younger, when we started out. I mean, it's a little tough to sit around in a hotel room and on a bus and in a dressing room all for 2 hours of the day. You feel like your life is passing you by. But we still really like to play, and we love to record. I mean, we had a great time doing this record, and I don't think we'd ever want to really give that up, so long as everything else around it worked well. The friendship is important, the fact that we like the music, and it's a vehicle for Geddy and myself creatively, as well as for Neil lyrically. So it's got everything right going for it.
A Rush classic from 1987's Hold Your Fire, that was Time Stands Still, featuring Amy Mann's vocal. The big news in the world of Rush is their new CD, Test for Echo, and their tour in support of it. Here's Neil Peart.
The more you do something, obviously, the better you should get at it. And touring used to be a measurable level of improvement and progress for us, which at a certain point, as for any craftsman, you learn your craft, and you have to just accept that as your toolbox now, and you know how to do what you want. You have to just decide what you want to do with those tools. So touring has changed its focus now. For us, it's more of a challenge to try to reproduce what we do on record. It's reversed itself, where it used to be a challenge to get better so that our records would improve, where now our recording technology and technique have both come to the point where the big challenge is trying to reproduce that live. So when we do start a new tour, as we're just about to do, it becomes an enormous undertaking of sifting the material, deciding what we're going to play, and most of all, how we're going to play it.
We'll be hearing more about the tour and more of Rush's music, new and old, on Part 3 of Rush, Up Close. 1-800-CALL-ATT presents Up Close. The unmistakable vocals of Geddy Lee. He also plays bass. And if that's not enough, he's 1/3 of Rush's songwriting team.
Writing songs, to a certain degree, are nothing more than a kind of an artful thinking out loud. And with us, I think, in some ways, that's very true. You know, you wonder about these things to the point where you become obsessed with wondering about them, and then it leads to putting them down on paper and singing about them.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer. As we've told you over the last couple of Up Close episodes, Rush has a new album called Test for Echo. As you hear my voice, they're out touring and testing those new songs. And they're featured once again on the Media America Radio Network. Welcome to Part 3 of Rush. Half the World from Test for Echo. Back in 1989, Rush released their third live album, A Show of Hands. Here's drummer Neil Peart.
If at first you don't succeed, you know, we made one live album and didn't really like it in retrospect, and we made a second one and didn't really like it in retrospect, so it was another chance to get it right in one sense. And also, it's an alternative to the compilations and sort of the retrospectives and all that. It's a way for us to control it, present it in a slightly new framework, and reevaluate ourselves as live performers, and get in and examine what we're doing on stage as active working musicians. So it's pretty much germane to us. We became known as a touring band, and I think it's still fundamental to the way that Rush is perceived, is a live working band on stage. And so that it is an important part of what we do. We're not a band that just makes records and videos and then occasionally goes out and does a token tour every 5 years. You know, for us, it's been a constant cycle of recording and touring and recording and touring. It's been the evolution of the band.
Closer to the Heart by Rush. Recorded in Birmingham, England in 1988, it found its way onto a show of hands in January of the next year. The following December, presto! Rush had another new album. Here's guitarist Alex Lifeson.
I think with this record, it's gone back to maybe a more direct rock style that we have always enjoyed playing, and combine that with a lot of the things that we've experimented with and explored over the last couple of records, from Hold Your Fire and Power Windows specifically. I think in a lot of ways this record's a lot more accessible in the sound and in the directness of it. The production isn't as perhaps involved as Hold Your Fire was. There was more reliance on the keyboards on that record, which we've tended to use much more as a backdrop and as a coloring rather than as a primary instrument. So certainly as a guitarist, I prefer that route.
Neil Peart returns to the Media America airwaves as Rush Up Close continues. Neil reports on a Presto song, Show, Don't Tell.
It comes from an editorial advice to a writer, and I'm sort of a sophomore writer, and one of the great laws is you don't tell your reader something, you show it. And it started to matter in lyrics too, and in other prose writing things I've done, where SDT is the editor's code to say, you know, don't tell this thing, show it, make it. You know, you don't say that your character is a jerk. You show that. You know, you just describe your character and his actions in such a way that it's apparent that that is so. So I kind of had that little phrase stuck in my mind as a grin.
Show, don't tell. Here's Gamblin' Geddy Lee.
A lot of things that go into making the course of your life, and one factor that's never really recognized is kind of accidents of fate or twists of fate, whatever you want to call them. So it talks about that, and it talks about the kind of scenario where you get people that seem to complain all the time about how they just don't have any good luck, and constantly things are going wrong for them, and they ponder that, and the title track, Roll the Bones, I think addresses that in the sense where it goes, well, look, we don't know why we're here, but we do know that we are here, and we do know that we are capable of doing certain things if we get off our ass and do it. So it kind of says go for it, and it's kind of what that song speaks to, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer, welcoming you back to Media America Radio's production of Rush Up Close. Here's Geddy Lee with the news line on Dreamline.
When we wrote that song, it almost seemed immediately that, well, this is the opening track of the album. We like to start every album with that song we feel is best representative of the whole album. And I feel that song is, for me. It's very positive, and that's definitely one of my faves. I'm playing a lot of chords, especially the chorus, the bridges, which sound like choruses. That's why I get them mixed up. But there's a lot of bass chording and rhythm guitar playing for bass, which is fun for me. And I like doing that stuff because you're not supposed to be able to do that stuff.
Dreamline came to us courtesy of Rush's Roll the Bones. Now, here's Neil Peart.
Stick It Out is a perfect example of wordplay and just having some fun with words. And also, again, I love to debunk myths in common language, and people talk about restraint as if it were an evil thing, and they talk about total liberation as being some kind of thing. And that's a popular subject in songs in the present day, and also comparable to love songs, which we'll get to in a minute.
But in this context, I thought, well, restraint isn't always so bad. You know, if you're a well-trained martial arts master, you better learn some restraint to hold it back. And it's great to have lightning reflexes, but those lightning reflexes had better be guided by reason. Or if somebody taps you on the shoulder, you'll turn around and break their face. You know, so restraint is always necessary.
Stick It Out came from Counterparts. As usual, it features Geddy Lee singing Neil Peart's lyrics.
You try to be objective about Neil's lyrics, and sometimes he'll give you something that you immediately get off on. And whether you understand it in the same way he intended is really irrelevant at that point. As long as you get off on it and you get a strong vibe from it, and then you carry on writing. Other times, you're not quite sure. You know, you're not quite sure if you like the lyrics. You're not quite sure if I'm not quite sure if I'm comfortable singing them. And then I have to sit down with him and discuss them, and then we talk, and then I have to get a little bit inside his head and find out what he was after, and that will either, correct the problem, or, send the song into a different direction, or start a series of rewrites, or it may be an unresolvable problem where the lyric just doesn't get done.
RUSH_SUSC TEST for echo contains VIRTUALITY, which presents an interesting VIEW of the WORLD of computers. Here's GEDDY.
The thing about that song, and it was a subject I really was very hesitant to touch, because it's, it can be so easily very corny to deal with these things. But except when you tune in that there's a lot of cynicism in this song, and basically it's kind of a cynical song. It's not embracing this technology with open arms. It's criticizing it, and I don't know if people will get that vibe from it. But let's face it, if you're a writer, if you are a student, if you are just someone who's looking for information, it's the greatest revelation of the modern era. It's unbelievable what's at your fingertips. But if you just are someone who's really got too much time on your hands, you can get lost in there for a long, long time, downloading a lot of kind of useless information.
Rush's Virtuality from their latest Test for Echo. Once again, here's Geddy Lee.
The fact that we've been able to be a band for this long is tremendously satisfying in itself. I mean, I think really it's something to celebrate, the fact that we've been able to stay together through all various things we've been through, and still have an audience and still be considered contemporary. To me, that's tremendously rewarding.
You can reward yourself by picking up Rush's Test for Echo and by catching their concert when it comes to your town.